The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering Co-op Advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, a new novel, perfect for wintertime and perfect for learning how to smooth out complicated relationships with family members. We'll talk with local author Megan Tady about her new book, Bluebird Day, before her release event at Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley tomorrow.
And Mr. Universe Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed takes his Kainaat studios to the other side of our home planet, to China, and gives us his insights into the new space race between the U.S. and that nation.
But we begin with heat. This from a story by Samuel Gelinas in today's Greenfield Recorder. Quote, a week after warm weather led to warnings of fire danger statewide, homeowners are starting to turn their thermostats up as temperatures drop. But for many, the extra expense to heat their homes is a tough ask. That's why state and local agencies are making their annual nudge, encouraging eligible residents to apply for fuel assistance through the Home Energy Assistance Program.
The story continues. HEAP, offered in Hampshire and Franklin counties through Greenfield-based Community Action Pioneer Valley, is a free service that helps homeowners and renters pay a portion of winter heating costs for income-eligible households. Executive Director Claire Higgins recommends that people who think they might need financial help this winter start off with a full tank now and take the time to apply.
The story goes on to say that at the same time as it processes fuel assistance applications, Community Action is set to launch a local campaign called Heat Up to raise additional money to cover demand once federal funds dry up. And here to talk about Community Action and Heat Up and Fuel Up with Heat Up is Claire Higgins, the Executive Director of Community Action Pioneer Valley and the former mayor of the great city of Northampton. Always my mayor, Claire Higgins. As well as she gave me the cut. Don't mention the Associate Director of Community Engagement at Community Action, Jess Thompson.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks
Hello.
for joining us.
Hi, folks.
Hello.
Community Action, Mayor. I always call you Mayor Claire, but I will stop. Director Claire.
Boss lady's good.
Boss Lady Claire.
And that's what it is forever now.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar with Community Action, one of your Head Start vans drove right by my house this morning in my neighborhood in the Patch. But what else does Community Action do besides this heating and fuel for folks?
Oh, my goodness.
Claire has passed it to Jess already.
Community Action is the anti-poverty agency for Franklin and Hampshire County. We have about 40 different programs covering from fuel assistance to Head Start to WIC. We have programs for youth and workforce development, fuel assistance. The best thing to do if you are curious, because if I would take up all of our time just doing like a laundry list of all of our programs, is to go to communityaction.us, which is our website. And things are organized there by the types of resources that we offer. But really, when you think about it, our role is to keep our neighbors with low incomes fed, warm, supported, and connected. So if you think of the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's us. Mm-hmm. We're providing support for the basics to take care of our neighbors, to take care of our community.
And I'd add that we're part of a national network of community action agencies that grew out of the War on Poverty in 1964. Sergeant Schreiber was the first director of the Office of Community Services. It's now called that. It was called the Office of Economic Opportunity. One of his firmly held belief was that communities needed to solve these problems, that they could do it with program support and money from the federal and the state government, but ultimately communities had to have a commitment to making this happen. So our board reflects that by having a third of our members appointed by elected officials, a third of our board members are private sector individuals, and a third of our board members are elected by the people who use our services.
Mm-hmm. So coming from the actual community itself. That's
great.
That's right. Yeah.
Now that was 1964, and that's when Head Start began, and lots of programs began. We're 60 years out now this year, so things look different now, right? And a lot of those things have been codified and baked into the federal budget, and we earnestly hope that they stay baked into the federal government because they're so important. But each of those programs, some people need all of the service, just about all the services we have, and some people come in once. We do their taxes. It helps them get a good refund. They're in between jobs. That gets them to the next thing, right? So it can be somebody uses fuel assistance for a year because they need to, and somebody uses fuel assistance for a long time because they're a senior on a fixed income or they're a low-wage worker, and that hasn't changed, right? So as Jess said, we meet those basic needs. I want to just mention one other thing about that. Sometimes people say, well, you're paying to heat their houses. Why don't you fix their houses? Well, in fact, we do fix their houses. We have we're funded by the federal government also to do weatherization, and we also do heating repair and system and repair and replacement. And we are doing more and more work doing mini splits through the utility companies. So we also do that.
I get 2 thumbs up from our engineer, Betsy. Mini splits on the mini splits.
I mean,
and my parents just got mini splits this year too. It does seem like the wave of the future, especially if you're going to go solar, if you want to get off natural gas or other kind of fossil fuel.
That's correct.
Yes.
And in Western Mass, especially Hampshire, Franklin, and Berkshire County, we have a very high level of people who get fuel that's delivered to their house by a truck.
Right.
Propane, oil. We still have coal customers, wood customers, kerosene.
Wow.
Lots of things that people get delivered to their house in order to get the house warm. And we're more dependent on those kinds of fuels than much of the rest of the Commonwealth. Eastern Mass is much more served by the utility companies.
You say that list, and it becomes apparent how incredibly dangerously creative humans have been in the ways that they heat their houses. And community action started around 1965, but has fuel assistance always been a part of it? When did it start?
Claire loves this question.
And we're speaking with Claire Higgins and Jess Thompson from Community Action.
And history nerd, maybe. So I remember the oil crisis when Jimmy Carter was president and people were lined up to fill their tank of gas, right? At that same time, people who heated with delivered fuels were lined up trying to figure out or worried about heating their homes, right? So there was a short-term program that was funded in the Carter administration, as I remember from reading about it, because I don't remember it, because I was so young then. Actually wasn't so young, but I didn't drive, so it didn't really, Anyway, so they started a program. But that fuel assistance program, as I remember, it really got codified in the early 80s when Ronald Reagan was president. And the utility companies have a vested interest in people being able to pay their bills. So it's a mutually beneficial program, right? We have great partners with oil dealers, Sandry and Sue Cerner from Cerner, like all these other ones that are just great partners with us to make sure people get the heat.
So how much of this is coming from, I mentioned in the intro that the Greenfield Recorder article talks about signing up for a program because there is actual assistance available from the federal government, or is it the state government, or a little bit of both?
From the federal government.
Okay. Is there any state help when it comes to heating?
There was state heating for a couple of years but during the pandemic, but that has really gone away now.
And I know that you can probably still call our friend Joe Kennedy III's dad, Joe for Oil, who was doing a sort of a heating assistance thing. But then you at Community Action are – Claire's giving me a look. We have a long relationship on the radio, Claire Higgins and I. Joe III was just with us on the March last week. But if we want to go through Community Action, how do you know if you're eligible, if you're somebody who meets the criteria for the fuel assistance that Community Action has to offer?
You want to go to our website, again, www.communityaction.us. You're going to go to the fuel assistance page, and there you will find the income guidelines. If you do not have access to the internet, please just call Community Action, and we have a team of people who will help you. But for one person, for a household of one person, fuel assistance eligibility is at $49,196.
So if you're living alone and you make less than $49,000, you will be eligible for fuel assistance.
Yeah.
And that seems high in a way, but it's not so high anymore, right?
Not in
When you think
Massachusetts.
in the context of rents and so on, right? So, a family of two can make up to $64,000, but a lot of single moms and kids don't make anywhere near 64. So
Right.
you have to be under that number.
Yeah.
Right.
And you get the minimum benefit if you're at the top of that range, and then the benefit goes up the further down the range you are. Right?
Yeah. And it's paying a portion of,
Right.
of your heating. It is not the whole shebang. So that's an important thing to note. So, Monty, you were asking about sort of the difference between fuel assistance, which is a federal program that it is administered locally in Franklin and Hampshire County by Community Action. We also have a fundraising campaign called Heat Up. Heat Up is to sort of line the borders of the assistance that we get from the federal government and to sort of buffer what their definition of need is. Because we see folks every day, literally every single day, who are a little bit over. Oh, sorry, you make $50 more than the limit. Or your need doesn't fall neatly within the box of this program, that program, or program the other program. And we really need to have dollars available to help people stay warm, to help pay their utilities, and to help keep them housed, right? Those folks who are facing eviction. And we know that that is a huge step off of a waterfall of disaster, and that if we can prevent that, we can then help them through our 40 other programs with all the other things that they need to be able to care for their families and be, healthy and warm.
Yeah. Again, back
addressing the cliff effect.
to the cliff effect and that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you mentioned before.
Cliff, that's better than waterfall, but same difference.
We learned about the
We
cliff
don't go
effect
chasing those.
through the food bank march, where
Yeah.
people are so close to that eligibility to some program, but are just shy, and that keeps them from maybe taking a promotion that would ultimately help them benefit in the future. But then they would lose their heating assistance, or they lose their SNAP dollars.
Yeah, I don't want to, people who are living with low incomes have it really hard in this economy at this point. Rents are higher than they've ever been. A lot of other costs are also higher than they've ever been. And the benefits don't necessarily close that gap. Our Heat Up Fund is not going to close the gap either. It's one part of putting together. It's a little extra, Band-Aid on the safety net, right? But for the individual who qualifies, it can make a big difference.
Well, let's take a quick little break here, and then we'll hear more about the Heat Up program and how you might be able to get involved with it with Claire Higgins, the Executive Director of Community Action of the Pioneer Valley, as well as Jess Thompson, who's the Community Engagement Director and the head of their Heat Up campaign.
And later, author Megan Tady on her new book, Bluebird Day, which comes out tomorrow and who will be feted at the Odyssey bookshop in South Hadley. And Mr. Universe is fresh back from China, where he got a glimpse of the other side of the planet on the other side of the space race.
That's all coming up. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We are here with Claire Higgins, the Executive Director of Community Action of the Pioneer Valley, as well as the Associate Director of Community Engagement, Jess Thompson, and we're talking about keeping our neighbors warm with their Fuel Up for Heat Up campaign, which is underway right now.
You were mentioning some of the qualifications that people need to meet in order to get, your standard assistance, Heat Up is kind of a separate thing, but when was the last time that those standards federally were changed?
That's a good question. They update the income guidelines every year. So every year it's a little bit different.
Okay.
And they try to keep it in line with inflation, et cetera. So
So they realistically reflect what people are going through?
we take their money and we follow their rules,
Yeah.
right? So they update the right,
Yeah.
right. So they update the rule, they update the eligibility, and we go for that. It's interesting to look at who receives our fuel assistance. Often it's retirees, and their income is not going up dramatically from year to year. So even if the income eligibility adjusts, they're still going to be, most likely be okay. We also have a lot of veterans. A lot of families with children. Some of them stay on, again, as I said earlier, as low-wage workers. They may stay on for a long time, or they may come in and out. We have also younger people with disabilities. Often this is a really important part of putting together their plan for being okay, right? So, but they do get updated, and the money comes through the state and then to us. So we don't work directly with the federal government on the fuel assistance program. Each state has their own variety of rules, and I want to note that they all have to comply with the feds, obviously, but it could be a little bit different. And in the 413, which is your territory.
Yes, it is.
I just want to make sure we cover the
And
whole.
what a fabulous territory it is.
Okay, that was not a plant. I just
Sure, Claire.
you're a plant.
She was thinking about it the whole way down here. The whole way
Who you
down.
call it a plant? But in Berkshire County, Berkshire Community Council runs the program, BCAC, and their challenges are a little different because of the layout of the county. They have, a city of 40,000. Our largest community is Amherst with. It's in the high 30s, but minus the students, it's a whole different point of view right over there. And Valley Opportunity Council, which covers really all of Hampden County at this point, just about. They have a really interesting profile of users because lots of utility companies, but then a real big mix of delivered fuels as well. And then they have a couple of municipal utility companies, right? So each area does things a little bit differently within the confines of those rules. And what we've found, given the high dependence on delivered fuels, to have this kind of fund where we can help somebody out to get that, to bridge a little bit of a gap can make a difference. But I'll tell you, fuel assistance is never going to pay the full fuel bill for anybody.
Neither from the HEAP program nor the program that you are fundraising for. And as a quick aside, in reference to what Claire just said, we will be later in the week focusing on a fundraiser that's happening in Pittsfield to try to help fill the gaps of the folks at Pittsfield who are relying on fuel assistance.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and it's another fun fundraiser, not unlike your Fuel Up for Heat Up campaign. Jess Thompson, who is the associate director of community engagement for Community Action. This is the Heat Up campaign has been going on since the beginning of November, and it's been going through all these different phases. And very generous organizations and banks and things have been stepping up to help incentivize people. But starting today and this week, there is something in particular going on. If people are interested in participating in that, they can. Yes.
Oh yes, I am very excited about this portion of our Fuel Up campaign, our Heat Up campaign, and this portion is called Fuel Up for Heat Up. We have partnered with 7 different restaurants in Franklin and Hampshire County. Each one of those restaurants is participating on a day this week, and I will go through those for you, but they are donating a portion of their proceeds to Community Action. And so today, right after this, I will be screaming to Greenfield to go to Mesa Verde.
Don't get pulled over.
I will try not to get pulled over.
But say hello to our friend Amy McMahon.
Absolutely. I will be seeing Amy, and Local Burger in Northampton is also participating today.
Which I will be going to.
Well, you'll be going to Local Burger.
charge
Say
of
hi to Chef Jeff.
Yes.
We know all these folks. We love them.
And his dad, Joe.
Yeah,
the best
I love
coleslaw ever.
Yeah.
Tuesday is in Deerfield at Leo's Table, so that's breakfast and lunch. Dinner at India House. Wednesday is all of the different Western Mass locations of Bueno Isano. So that's Amherst, Northampton, Deerfield, and West Springfield. And then Thursday is Eastside Grill in Northampton and Protocol in Amherst.
Oh, yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
So
Yeah, I
the
haven't
cool
either.
thing about this is the community connections. These are not gigantic corporations, right? These and oftentimes are small family-owned businesses, and they see a need in the community and they're coming through. They not only are they helping us monetarily, but they're helping Community Action to reach a group of people that may vaguely know what Community Action does is good, but not specifically the kinds of programs that we offer and how we help our community. And really the restaurants have been chef's kiss. They've been
unintended.
They've been amazing and kind and generous and so helpful in really getting the word out. So lots of wonderful not-for-profit organizations will be asking for your support on Giving Tuesday, which is tomorrow.
Including us.
Yes, exactly. And we are just asking you to go out to dinner. Yeah. That is really what Community Action is hoping for this week. For those who would like to do a little bit more or can't go out to dinner for whatever reason this week, you can also go to our website. Again, that's www.communityaction.us and just donate to the Heat Up Fund there. And every little bit is meaningful in building towards our goal. Last year, we had never raised as much as we did last year. It was around $100,000. And because, as Claire said, the economy is challenging for many of our neighbors, around September, I sat in one of our leadership meetings, and my colleague said, "How soon do you think you could start that fundraising?"
Wow.
Yesterday. So we have bumped it up to $150,000. That's our goal this year. Mm-hmm. We have a anonymous donor this week who has offered to match up to $25,000. So if everybody goes out to eat and a few people donate to the Heat Up Fund, we will be able to get a third of the way there to our $150,000 goal. So please go get something really good to eat.
We can't do direct calls to action on our station. Unless it's about donating to us.
To go out and eat.
Yes, we can say if you must.
Food is tasty.
Food is tasty, and here are locations that you could, if you wanted to, go out and have food.
If you like a burger.
Yeah, that might be some place that you could check out. And also, additionally, at the same time, this would happen.
Yes.
It's just the facts.
The fact is also they also have
Can I just
milkshakes.
say that,
yes, Claire?
does that not making direct pitches include the new NEPM on Giving Tuesday?
Isn't that the irony? We can
Okay,
only
I'm just confirming that.
We can only ask for money for ourselves, and then Khalees and I play fast and loose with the rules to talk about how everyone else could help other people through other nonprofits, and with the support of our
the powers that be here. The blue cheese and honey naan is at India House, and leave it at that.
Yeah, there's lots of delicious.
It's surprising.
There's
and
nothing bad
wonderful.
at India House.
That's
There's
fact.
nothing bad at
I will
India
be there tomorrow. I've got all my girlfriends going. We're having a girls' night out.
What's that song? Ain't that girlfriend? Never mind.
Claire Higgins is about to sing. Also,
Boss Lady Claire Higgins.
Boss Lady Claire Higgins. Before we let you go, tell us about how many people through Community Action of the Pioneer Valley, and again, this doesn't count the Berkshires, this doesn't count Hampden County, that are relying on fuel assistance or likely to this coming winter.
Last year we had about 9,000 applications. We were able to say yes to a little over 8,000 of those folks, and we expect it to be similar, if not more, this year. So there's a lot of folks that need a little help.
And if you were to raise the amount of money that the goal is, you'd be able to say yes to more people.
We would definitely be able to say yes to more people.
But we can also say to those people come in the door and maybe don't qualify for fuel assistance, have you thought about doing your income tax return? Because that might get you. We'll do it for you for free.
Yes.
And then maybe that will help you. Or often people come in with not just the fuel issue, but maybe they have a child care issue, or maybe they have a food issue. We run a pantry in Franklin County, two pantries in Franklin County that help reach people who otherwise might not be able to get food. So it's not just you come in and you qualify or you don't qualify. I will say one thing the state did this year or last year. We're moving towards a more categorical eligibility, for want of a better word. If you're on SNAP benefits up to a certain level, then you're qualified for fuel assistance, and it's up to a certain level, right? But that's helpful to people.
Yeah,
because
make it easy for people.
It
one
streamlines
thing
it.
is, if you're poor, you have to wander around with your folder full of papers proving that you're poor,
Right.
right? And
The irony.
Yeah.
Right.
Being poor is a full-time
Exactly.
job.
Exactly.
Yeah, and folks like Community Action are doing the work to try to meet those most basic of human needs, and we're really grateful that we have folks like Claire Higgins at the helm of Community Action of the Pioneer Valley, as well as our Associate Director of Community Engagement, Jess Thompson, who've joined us today. You can find out all about the Fuel Up for Heat Up and all about the services Community Action has to offer by going to communityaction.us. Thank you both so much for telling us about this program.
Thank you.
thanks for having us.
Always nice to
Our
see you,
pleasure.
Claire.
Always lovely to see you, Martin.
Later in the show, a preview of the new novel Bluebird Day, written by Valley author Megan Tady. But up next, Mr. Universe, Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed regales us of tales from the other side of our planet as he has just returned from China.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, offering solar options, energy security, and solutions for the local community. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Well, here we are, back again at the Amherst kitchen table of Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe.
Hold on. First for your Monty, the Food March, March for Hunger. Amazing. What is it? I know it's over 500,000, but how
Yeah,
much
I think
did
the
you
latest total from over the weekend that I heard was $585,000 and counting, and people are still making contributions all the way up through the end of this calendar year. So thank you to everybody who participated in that.
Amazing.
For sure.
Absolutely incredible.
And you, Salman Hameed, while I was on the march, were in China. Now, we talk about China all the time on this show and how there is a space race of sorts going on right now between the U.S. and China, mostly surrounding the moon and moon bases and all the innovations that the Chinese have been doing, but how the United States has sort of kept them at bay and not want to participate in the international community because of all of the political drama that exists between the United States and China. You were there. Did you study Kung Fu at the Shaolin Temple or in the Wudang Mountains? That's why I would have gone.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous.
No, I missed that one. You should have told me ahead of time.
Yeah.
No, but it was, I was there for about 9 days, and it was really fantastic. And we talked about it before I left also. I mean, one of the reasons for going, apart from I was giving a couple of talks over there, and I really wanted to see Shanghai Astronomy Museum, which we are going to talk about, but we hear a lot about China, but it is filtered through a particular perspective of a news media. Mm-hmm. I can see in the journal Nature, for example, where it lists top universities in terms of research output, in terms of citations of papers in top journals, and Chinese universities are up in the top. But that's not the perception I had, for example, 20, 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And so what has really changed on the ground? And so that was one of the big reasons for me to go.
So let's start with the Shanghai Museum. You sent me some photos and some videos of this incredible astronomy museum in Shanghai.
I would say it is perhaps the best.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is it's big. It's quite a bit far off from Shanghai city center. It was about almost an hour and a half away. Initially, I was like, oh, come on. It's not, I thought it would be near the city center. You can just right in the tourist areas. But on the other hand, it is really busy. It is really hard to get in. That's after it being an hour and a half away. It's a beautiful design building. There is a lot of thought that has gone into it. I talked to the director of the planetarium, who was gracious enough to give me a bit of a tour. And he said it took them 10 years to really think through how they are going to present things in there, what's going to go in. One thing that I was really appreciative of that was Earth, even though it's about the universe. But Earth actually plays a central role. You see the Earth multiple times coming in because you have to understand and take care of our own planet. But overall, they have 3 big themes. One is home, so that's related to the Earth, but also the sun, and also the solar system. and then you go into what is called the cosmos, and then there are multiple themes in there, and the last section in there is the Odyssey, and that is about space travel, or I mean, the voyages in general, voyages of discovery from the history perspective, but also it ends up with the space program, including the Chinese space program, but also a lot of NASA stuff. They actually highlighted, I was wondering if they are going to, say, for example, highlight Apollo missions or Mars missions, and they actually do. There is actually, in the museum, there almost was reverence for NASA, which was interesting. But towards the end, actually, there is a small model of the space station. For example, you could go in the Chinese space station, not the International Space Station.
Right, because we don't let them in the International Space Station.
That's exactly right. The keys are not for them. But the Chinese space station, you can actually go in, and but then also the lunar missions, the Chang'e missions that have gone in and brought the samples back. It was really well done. It just seemed like it was state of the art, or state of the science, as you should say.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of art in there. They actually worked with artists to not just bring out science, but also to think about how to connect art with science. And one of my favorite places over there was this journey. It was like a cosmic wall, which is interactive. You can actually touch it, and actually it changes in there, and it starts with sort of like the beginnings of the universe. It's a really eerie feeling in there. It's a cosmic feeling in there to a certain degree. You are more feeling the evolution of the universe than just seeing it. So those touches in there are really spectacular. And I didn't even get a chance to go to the actual planetarium, and that was because it was all sold out.
Yeah.
Everything was packed.
There's a lot of people in China.
There are, and a lot of them were at the planetarium. So all I would say is, and the director also himself, he said, I was like, the Natural History Museum, the Rose Planetarium, and he says, oh yeah, he says, and that's been a great big inspiration for us. So there was a lot of homage being paid to NASA, to the Rose Planetarium in New York, in LA, and you can see the effort that has gone in. So if you have a chance to go to Shanghai, this is way out of the way. Although close
As if China is not way out of the way. Shanghai's museum is way out of the way.
Although it is close to one of their airports, but it's absolutely spectacular. You can easily spend hours there. I spent about 4 hours there, and I had to hurry up.
We're speaking with Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe, who's just back from the other side of this planet in China. Salman Hameed also works with Kainaat and Kainaat Kids, which is teaching people from South Asia things about astronomy. You were in further Asia, teaching 6th graders about astronomy and interacting with a class. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, so Kainaat Studios, we make videos oftentimes in Urdu, but now we are actually expanding it in English as well for the global South. I mean, I think representation matters. So I was invited over there by one of the Zhejiang Association for Science Popularization that is based in Hangzhou, which is a little south of Shanghai. So first of all, we are now collaborating, and they will be dubbing our videos potentially to go on one of the subway systems in Hangzhou.
Oh, cool.
And so that's really cool. I did ask, how many people take, that subway system or the train system, a local train system over there? And I was told about 2.5 million. I was like, wow, that's a lot of people per year.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's per day. And as it turns out, those numbers were also out of date because it's actually, they were 3 years old. Now it's actually, Hangzhou has the highest number of people who take train every day or subway every day, and it's around 5 million per day.
Wow.
This nonprofit, actually, they already have science videos, 2-minute clips, and they play them, but without sound. So the subtitles become important, or the visuals. And so that's why they could use our videos. So
you're going to be huge in the subway system of China.
Well, we'll figure out how to do that, but we are also going to be, initially, we'll probably subtitles and dub them if there is sound, but then we hope to co-produce, because science is not just for one culture, and that's what we want to change, highlight other cultures. So if you're talking about the sky, it's not just sort of from the Southwest here in the US, but rather from China, from Pakistan, from Kenya, from Namibia. We really want to bring global astronomy into the mix. And so China, of course, it has 1 billion people, so that's a big step for us.
That's like when there was an old joke that my mom told me I was 1 in a million, which means there's 1,000 of me in China.
Yeah, exactly. And so this group, actually, they also invited me to give a talk at a primary school in Hangzhou. Those were 6th graders. Not by my choice, but it just happened to be the case. And my son is also in 6th grade in Amherst Public Schools. And so I was like, oh yeah, I think I can handle the 6th graders.
And?
Oh, it was such a lovely experience. I talked about sort of like, search for life. And so I talked about Mars, Europa, and Enceladus, and potential for life on water signatures on Mars. And of course, there is a Chinese rover as well on Mars. And the first thing I would say is, even though I was working through an interpreter, but anytime I would have to be careful, because if there was a big pause, there would be 10 hands that would go up. And there were such good questions. Like, they were really into it. And that's one of those things at that age. I mean, I think, until we beat the curiosity out of these kids in school, they just are inherently curious. It doesn't matter where you are. And great questions, a lot of fun, and they wanted me to autograph their books, and so I was doing that. I don't know what I was doing, but I was like, okay, I'll write it like my name. And there was one funny kid who put something in front of me, and I was about to sign, and they go like, just be careful, this is his homework. He wants you to fill up his English homework. So it was a lot of fun.
The other thing, and this is not astronomy related, is the trains. You sent me a video, or an attempt of a video of the train, but the train was going so fast that I didn't even get to see it because you couldn't get the camera out in time, because they have the real deal high-speed trains. We're talking about east-west rail all the time. That's going to be slow as molasses compared to what you had just experienced, right?
Right. So this was, again, part of the experience, right? I mean, that what's going on. And they have these high-speed trains. You can also call them bullet trains. They go over 300 kilometers per hour.
Which is like, what, 50 miles an hour?
So over 200 miles per hour. Yeah, and they are new. They are really nice. And they really connect network from one town to another, one city to another city. And so it was weird, from Shanghai to, you would find oh, here's this other town is a couple of 100 miles away. Oh, you're going to get there in 45 minutes or an hour. It takes longer, by the way, to get to the train station within a city. That's true. It will take me 45 minutes from a hotel or an hour to get to the train station. But then from there to another city, it's like an hour. And so that's one of those things, okay, so we hear about it, but how do they actually operate? How do you experience it? And I wasn't with a tour. I was by myself. I was like, okay, can I maneuver in China going through these trains, through this train station? And I would say it's not that easy, meaning to say you don't find English everywhere. Even in Shanghai, I thought it was hard. But translate, not Google Translate, but Apple's Translate, I was using that. And you could actually just say the phrase and people would, it would translate it or type it up. And for signs, you can actually, there's a camera. This technology is cool. There are a lot of bad things about these type of technologies, but this is really cool. You could just look at the sign and it would translate what it says. But it was just a phenomenally organized experience. Thing that I showed you, sort of I sent you a picture, we were going at that time 300 kilometers per hour because you could see it. And then I would show you outside and it's sort of pretty smooth ride. Yeah. And this particular instance, I was at the train station, a small station. And so I had just gotten off the train, and then I just heard this booming sound coming in, and I was like, oh, and I saw the train, and immediately I took out the camera. It took me a few seconds, and by that time I just caught the tail end of it because it was going full speed. As you mentioned, sort of we have a hard time with east-west rail here, but China is really connected in terms of trains, and I think that brings up a huge impact on local economies, for example, connecting rural areas to urban areas and so on and so forth. Absolutely incredible.
One last thing, Salman Hameed, in your time in China, bringing it back to our listeners here in the 413, the perceptions that we have in the media in this country about China versus what you experienced only for 9 days over there are disparate.
Yeah, I think, look, I'm not going to go into details about different things because, again, I'm not a China expert. I was there for a few days, so it's a pretty small thing. But I would say when we think about the space race, for example, it was a big deal that Sputnik happened. Whoa, Soviet Union has put a satellite up in space in 1957. And then there was a whole mobilization partly due to John F. Kennedy as well, that we need to compete with them and land a human on the moon, person on the moon. In the 60s, it was the man on the moon before the decade is out, right? There was a competition because that was considered as a competitive thing that we should not be behind. And space race is there. I don't know how much they care in terms of really about space race because it's more not isolated, but it's more self-contained. I mean, I didn't see over there. They didn't really care about the outside world as much, okay? But one thing that was impressive to me was what I had read about China earlier on, and that there was a lot of poverty in the 1970s, 1980s. And indeed, around 1980, 81, 70% of all population of China lived in extreme poverty. And 90% of the rural population was what the World Bank identifies as extreme poverty. That's $1.90 or $2 a day. And now that is less than 1%. That's incredible. I mean, however you look at that, there has been an emphasis, and I know this in itself becomes political in terms of poverty, and you just were part of the hunger, March for Hunger.
And we say all the time, hunger is a political condition, and we could solve this problem if we only had the political will.
And they have done that. And that in itself becomes political. They go like, oh, but your definition of hunger or poverty is a little bit different. Sure, we can quibble about that. But I don't think there is any dispute that overall conditions have improved and poverty has gone down drastically, dramatically. And that is an action by our government. When I was going through sort of like these trains, I did look for, okay, I will find shanty towns or other types of things. I really didn't see. Now, one immediate reaction is going to be, they must be hiding it. Maybe. But the other possibility is that, well, they did decrease the poverty levels from 1980 to now. Maybe it is less, or the houses are there. And indeed, they have moved people into apartments, for example. And there are apartments everywhere. Their scale is just insane. So my, again, last point regarding that and connecting to your March for Hunger as well is that, why don't we see that as, whoa, now this is something that they are trying to eliminate poverty or reduce poverty. We should really compete with them on that. We should really have a space program like that, in which we compete with them, that if they are eliminating poverty or reducing poverty, so should we. If they are trying to eliminate hunger, if they are providing food for the population, so should we. But we don't think like that. Here it comes up, in fact, in the opposite, especially with the Republicans now coming in and they go like, the freeloaders. But I think it is how we think about competition. And what you hear about China right now, it's all about they are trying to steal this stuff. They are trying to expand. They are trying to do this. Sure, but why not emphasize these things as well that actually can improve lives as well? And same thing I would say with science as well. We don't have to see everything through a security lens, through a political lens of that, because scientists also cooperate with each other. Again, not a politician, but purely from a human perspective. We should always learn something from our competitors. So if we think of China as a competitor, look for competition in places which can improve the lives of individuals. And reducing poverty is one of those. Reducing hunger is one of those. Please emphasize on that.
Salman Hameed is not only a Hampshire professor, not just the founder of Kainaat Studios or our Mr. Universe, but is playing Peter Cratchit in NEPM's production of A Christmas Carol, starring Elizabeth Perkins as Scrooge.
It's live this Wednesday at Treehouse, but it's sold out. However, it will turn into a radio play that you can hear here later this month.
Coming up, author Megan Tady, whose new book about skiing and family secrets and mother-daughter dilemmas comes out tomorrow, so she joins us.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering graduate programs in public affairs, public policy and administration, data analytics, and computational social science. umass.edu/SPP. NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. Bluebird Day is the latest novel by East Hampton author Megan Tady. It tells the story of a snowbound mother and daughter confronting each other and the secrets of the past in the shadow of an upcoming competition.
The book comes out tomorrow, December 3rd, and is being celebrated with a launch party at Odyssey Books in South Hadley. And with us now is said author, Megan Tady. Megan is a journalist and editor. She founded WordLift, a communication consulting and copywriting firm. Originally from Nebraska, she now lives here in New England with her husband and 2 children. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. The book was real fun.
We both read it. Perfect for like the long Thanksgiving weekend,
Yes.
especially with the snow that accumulated on my roof.
Not nearly enough.
But Khalees and I know all of the secrets of this book, so maybe the best way to start it out is, what's your elevator pitch about what this book is about so that we don't just go and spoil it for everyone?
Do not spoil the book.
Fair enough.
So the book is about mother and daughter who are ski racers, and they are estranged from each other. Claudine was a former Olympian, and Wiley's the daughter, and she was on that track, but she didn't want to keep skiing, and she quit the sport to go to art school. And that created a big rift. They haven't spoken in years, and now they are stuck in a Swiss town when an avalanche socks in the village.
There was a real avalanche that inspired this story.
Yes. So in 2018, a real avalanche socked in the town of Zermatt, where the book is set. And I remember reading that, and I was shocked by the story because 13,000 tourists were stranded there. And I was thinking, what an incredible setting for a novel. You know, there's only one way in and out of this town, and the railroad tracks and the road were socked in. And I started, I was thinking, if you're the head of tourism, how are you going around and announcing, by the way, you're stuck here and you can't ski? So I actually talked with that person. I interviewed him and sort of got the real dirt on what that was like. But I put that in my back pocket, and then when I started to develop this story of this mother and daughter, I kind of pulled that back out, and I thought, well, this is the perfect way to force them back together, and the only place for them to stay is a youth hostel with bunk beds, and that makes it even harder for them to get away from each other. They're in a tiny room in a youth hostel in a socked-in village.
Yeah, it's one of those pressure chamber kind of things, and one of the things I thought was most interesting is, like, in addition to like the stakes of their relationship getting higher and higher as the book goes along, the stakes of them leaving also get higher and higher. Like there's no helicopters, there's no trains. They try to come up with like even more and more dangerous ways to get out of this town as the book progresses, and I thought that was really neat too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I have to, up the ante a little bit and have them have reasons to want to get out. And there's just no way to get out. And then, of course, toward the end, no spoilers, I guess. I won't say.
No, that's what
Read the book.
I had to curtail myself.
Yeah, I did.
It's like it just gets way more dangerous than you're thinking.
It does.
Yes. And the book is called Bluebird Day. It's by author Megan Tady from East Hampton, who joins us right now. It is a mother-daughter story. How much of that, your own relationship with your own mother or your kids, a factor into the novelization that we read about in Bluebird Day?
That's a great question. So in my 20s, my mom and I went through periods of estrangement. And in my 20s, we decided to very consciously one summer do a summer of outdoor adventures together every week. She lived in the Pacific Northwest. And every week, every Wednesday, we would go kayaking. We drove mopeds on Salish Island and San Juan Islands. We took a weekend in the Olympic Peninsula. And the point of that was sort of not for us to just talk out the same old things, but to just be in nature together, to do things differently, to have our endorphins, kind of flowing through us. Now there's a lot of research about when you're in awe in nature, what that actually does to the brain and how it opens up new pathways. You're more receptive to one another. We didn't realize that's what we were doing exactly, but our walls came down and we were able to get to know each other. I think as people, we were still operating as mother and daughter and not necessarily like, oh, you're a human. You're not just a mom. You're not just a daughter. And we got to know each other and in a different way and build a foundation that was different. And we also had a lot of fun, romping around. So I think that planted some seeds in this for wanting to give Claudine and Wiley, the mom and daughter, something physical to do together that wasn't just hashing out the same old grievances, talking, because that wasn't working for them. Right. So that really planted the seeds.
This is your second novel. What are some lessons that you took from writing your first novel that we're reading the benefits of in this one?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. My first book took 8 years. It took a really long time to write it, to get an agent. I had my 2 kids. I was building my business. But it also gave me time to, just finesse it. And this book, I wrote under contract. It was the first time I had done that. So, I was under pressure. It's just like you've got to get it done. And you often forget that writing is also about time to think and process. It's not just at your computer. And I often do that when I'm hiking with my dog every day in East Hampton. And sometimes that was, I had more pressure. I had the pressure of like, think, and figure out the plot hole. But I also had an editor and an agent to help me this time around, which was really great. And I think it was also, I really learned to just trust, my subconscious is working on it. Even if I'm not actively writing, there's part of me that's, in the back of my mind. If I haven't gotten it that day, it might come in a few days if I just trust the process.
I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything if I mention that Mass Mocha makes an appearance in this book.
Yeah, is it Mass Mocha? It's not mentioned by name, but I read it as Mass Mocha.
I assumed it was Mass Mocha.
I don't mention it by name, but that inspired the
the former skier artist happens to work at a contemporary art museum
in the Berkshires.
Yeah, so I wonder what it could be. It's a great book. It's called Bluebird Day. It comes out tomorrow, and there will be a celebration with the author at Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley tomorrow. I'd say it's a beach read, but it's more of like a snowbird read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you could read it on the beach, but it definitely, you feel wintry when you read it.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
By a cozy fire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the one at Porches right across from Mass Mocha, maybe.
Oh, hey.
Well, thank you so much, Megan Tady, East Hampton author behind Bluebird Day. On the next Fabulous 413, the hills are alive like they've never been before. We speak with the creative team behind The Sound of Black Music, who'll perform at UMass Fine Arts Center this weekend about reimagining the classical musical.
We'll also get ready to expand our vinyl collections once again as we speak with organizer Studebaker Hawk about the Northampton Record Fair.
And it's Giving Tuesday.
Oh, hey.
So, what we'll be doing tomorrow. See you then.